Well, it's really great to see everybody. Welcome to this phone call. We want to try to accomplish a few things on this call, and I'm thinking that you're going to really enjoy this, mainly just because there's a lot of good things to report on in the midst of a very difficult time for Israel and really also for the United States. But I want to just personally thank you as I'm looking at names on this call, and there's just so many of you that have been with us for the duration in this, multi-month war that we've been in. And so just want to stop to say thank you. We really appreciate you being behind this organization inside this war. And I want to just reiterate that the relationship between the United States and Israel is very strong. And sometimes we're getting mixed reports out there, and there's a lot of pressure on the state of Israel, and there's going to be an increasing pressure as this war goes forward. But I want to just, again, remind us that we have strong support from the U.S. administration. We have, without ambiguity, as Israel prosecutes this war, the difficulty for Israel is that they have to go around the block to prosecute the war. So it's not a head-on war. They have to empty hospitals out. They've got to move civilian populations. They have to care about the babies. I mean, they're playing the most incredible role. If you can imagine, Hamas on October 7th had a major goal in mind. It wasn't just this spontaneous, we think we're going to go on a killing spree high on cocaine, which is what they were. But that was planned. It's been planned for years to elicit a response from the world, to anger and to produce a reaction out of the Muslim world, particularly against Israel. And so we have to understand their large goal, their large objectives, and what Israel is doing in many ways to counter that. Their objectives are very clear. One, we're going to get the hostages back. At the same time, we're going to prosecute a war with the objective to completely destroy Hamas's military and political capabilities. Alongside that, we're going to set up some new situation inside of Gaza where they will never be able to attack Israel in that same manner again. And so these are objectives, but alongside that, I want to bring out a point that's so important, because as we're talking about random acts of kindness, or Israel's kindness in taking care of babies and bringing humanitarian aid in, and looking at all of the ways that they can show kindness, it is also retaliatory. It puts up a strong word before the global community that Israel is on the right side of history. They're on the side of good versus evil. They want to do this in a way that is continues to keep the individual as a high priority. Human life is important to them, down to every baby, down to every grandfather. And so it's a roundabout war. I like to call it a roundabout war. They're going around the block to accomplish their objectives. And it's what any anybody that has human dignity as their concern above war is the way that you're going to prosecute a war. This is Israel's interest to be kind, and they are doing exactly that. So I want to just give an update, but first of all, just say that the U.S.-Israel relationship, it could not be stronger. We have the iconic relationship with Israel on the earth today, and it's something to be proud of. It's something to understand that we get to draw in many ways from the promises out of the Bible on this. Because God said very, very clearly, that the foreigners are going to rebuild your walls in the time of your return back into the land. The foreigners are going to rebuild your walls. Their kings are going to serve you, O Israel. Though in anger I struck you, with great compassion will I bring you back, so that men may bring you the wealth of the nations, and their kings led in triumphal procession. For the nation that will not serve you, Israel, will perish and be utterly destroyed. Isaiah 60:11. And we see verses like that in Isaiah about calling the nations, as Israel being the rallying point for the nations, and that we're going to draw national blessings for ourselves as we take care of Israel. So that's why you have an interest and you're on this phone call today, because you are a good citizen of the United States. You're trying to, in some ways, follow the values that God has as it concerns the nation of Israel and the United States. And so here we are. And I want to just say Anthony Blinken is headed to the region, our Secretary of State, and he is a key player. He has globe-trotted around the region, around the world, really trying to elicit support for Israel and the United States and their stance inside this war. The effort he is going to make is to try to extend the negotiations to get maybe 4 more days of hostages being released. The aim is to try to free the hostages, get the men, the women, and the children, and the soldiers, if possible. And we may not get to that stage. We may not get the opportunity to, but that is the aim. Hostages, we're in a break inside the war to release hostages. Once that is over, Israel has divided the Gaza Strip into 2 parts. You've got the north and the south, and within the north, they've divided that in half. And so they have basically taken over northern Gaza. That is a major, major feat. So we can say a big hooray today for Israel's strength and the power, and the length of time has been short for them to take the northern part of Gaza. The next challenge is going to be, once they move to the second stage of the war, is they're going to have to take the southern part of Gaza. Khan Yunis and some of the major strongholds of Hamas still remain. You've got Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, who's roaming around the tunnels talking to hostages, and he's going to have to be taken out. And so there's a lot left in the war. So I wanted today just to introduce our team, because I want to elaborate a little bit on what USIEA is doing. That is the United States Israel Education Association. We are a dynamic player inside of this war. We're a dynamic player on Capitol Hill. We've just met with 60-something members of Congress. In the last couple of weeks, we have been conducting briefings. We've been meeting personally with members of Congress, particularly the ones that are leading out front with legislation. So I have E.J. Kimball with us today. He's the director of policy and strategic ops, and he is carrying the day on Capitol Hill every day. He is up there meeting with members of Congress, and I wanted him to share a little bit about what we are going to be doing, what we have been doing as far as our legislative updates and opportunities where we're directly involved in the education process concerning this war. I want to highlight for all of you that we are the only organization at this point that has a meaningful presence inside the West Bank. This is really important because we are the ones taking senior leaders of Congress through there routinely. That means that we have got the access and the ear of Congress as experts as it concerns the West Bank. And what most of you don't know, that while we're prosecuting a war in Gaza, there's an unseen war going on in the West Bank. Israel is performing operations every single day to keep that from opening up into another war front. They're doing operations in Jenin and Hebron and all over the place, and removing Hamas. Hamas, people think they're just located in Gaza. They are not. They are located in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. And so we have that as well. As we look to the future, we're going to be bringing the ideas to Congress for where we go from here politically. Where do we stand with hopefully a new leadership representing the Palestinian people? There's a lot to do. And that is where USIEA stands on this. So EJ, I'd love for you to take it from here and give us some updates. Thanks for being with us. Followed by EJ is going to be Ari Sacher. He's our senior policy advisor, former chief engineer of Iron Dome, and then Stacy Ryan, our chief development officer. Thank you, EJ.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you all for joining today. And I'm happy to provide a bit of an update of what's going on in DC, not just what we're doing, but also what's happening in Washington. So let me sort of give you a little overview of what's happening right now in Washington, as Congress returned yesterday for about 3 weeks of work before they recess for the end of the year. So Congress is looking at a few different issues related to Israel's war against Hamas. And I would sort of break it down into three categories right now. Number one is the military support that Israel needs. Number two is dealing with Hamas's main benefactor and source of evil in the region, being Iran. And the third sort of bucket, if you will, is dealing with this surge in anti-Semitism that not only Jews are facing in America, but Jews are facing around the world. So those are the main areas that Congress has been focused on and are focusing on. So what specifically are they doing is, as you may have seen a couple of weeks ago, the House passed an emergency supplemental bill, an appropriations bill to provide Israel with additional military support to conduct this war. So the House passed their bill. The Senate is considering their own version of the bill, which now they are anticipating next week. And at that point, then they will need to come together, as Congress is so oft to do, work out their differences and get a bill passed into law so that the United States can help provide Israel with the weaponry that it needs to carry out this war. And on top of that, the diplomatic support that Israel needs and will need to continue carrying out this operation until Hamas is eradicated. The second sort of bucket, if you will, looking at Iran. There's a lot of efforts to deal with Iran. As quick background, the Trump administration put some very, very tight sanctions against the Iranian regime, and it was putting a stranglehold on their finances, which was impacting their ability to fund terrorism throughout the region. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism. They provide annually over $100 million to Hamas's budget, and some estimates have recently are that they were providing even more to Iran. They're also giving money to Hezbollah, which I believe Ari will talk about shortly. One of the bills that Congress is looking at, and the House specifically, is something called the SHIP Act, SHIP, the Stop Harboring Iranian Petroleum Act. And what this bill, it's a bipartisan bill. It passed the House. So now it's up to the Senate to pass this into law. This bill will put pressure on Iran financially. It goes after those that are transporting the petroleum from Iran. This is their chief export being oil. And if you cut off their ability to sell their oil around the world, you cut off their ability to provide all of this funding for terrorism throughout the region. The third bucket that we're looking at is fighting anti-Semitism. And there is a bipartisan bill in the House and companion bill in the Senate called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. And that would require the Department of Education to use a specific definition when looking at a potential anti-Semitic hate crime. And that definition is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition, which the definition lays out in simple terms what anti-Semitism is, but really the greater importance of the use of this definition, which has been incrementally adopted by the United States government, starting with the George W. Bush administration, going through President Obama, President Trump, and now being pushed as well with President Biden. This definition includes examples of modern forms of anti-Semitism. So if you think historically, anti-Semitism targeted Jews living amongst the world's nations. Then you have the reestablishment of the State of Israel in 1948. And so what has happened is a lot of those anti-Semitic tropes that were focused on the Jews living amongst the non-Jewish world has just been transferred to the Jewish state living amongst the non-Jewish states and blaming Israel for the world's problems as opposed to blaming Jews for the world's problems. So those are some of the highlights of what Congress is working on. Now, what are we doing specifically? As Heather mentioned, we've met with over 60 member offices, and we continue to meet with them. And primarily, we are spending our time meeting with members on the relevant committees, the foreign affairs committees, the armed services committees, the intelligence committees, and other key staff to help them understand not just what they're seeing in the news, but to understand, more importantly, the larger geostrategic implications of what's going on, specifically looking at Iran and the growing alliance that they have with Russia and China, and how that implicates challenges for U.S. national security interests in the region, on top of the challenges that it raises for Israel. So that's sort of what our day-to-day is being spent on. And obviously with the war, there are constant things changing. And so having Ari on the ground in Israel is extremely important for us to be able to provide real-time information and analysis. You know, when I look at the work, and I've been fortunate to be with USIEA for about 2 years now, helping to build up our efforts in Washington. And I've worked in Washington, unfortunately, for a very long time. But but what we are doing here at USIEA, I don't think the importance can be emphasized enough. We are a small organization, and we are operating as if we have a gigantic budget and a gigantic staff. The relationships that we have been able to build with these members of Congress, going up to the Speaker of the House, these are things that large organizations pay a lot of money to try to get access to. And this is what we do because of the work and the dedication that we have, and I would say the moral clarity of our vision. That helps us build these relationships with members across the aisle. We are working with Republicans. We are working with Democrats. Just the other week when there was the rally, the march in Washington, Heather, Joan Leslie, and I were at that march. And, you know, not someone that I thought I would be taking a picture with, but there I was with Senator John Fetterman. You know, one of the surprises, but has been one of the clearest advocates for Israel's right to not only defend itself and its citizens, but to eradicate Hamas. And even today, he was asked about potential conditioning of aid to Israel, and he dismissed it outright. So these are the ways that we are able to build up our relationships, and really it's a testament to the motivation and just drive that we all have as an organization. Last thing that I just want to finish with, because there are things that we do that others are not doing. And as Heather mentioned, the work that we've done in the West Bank specifically, and it's a very important message that we are able to give to members of Congress that others are not. And that is the work that we have focused on building a grassroots business movement, a integrated business movement between Israelis and Palestinians. And obviously there are challenges today, trust challenges, rightfully so, but these are the sorts of initiatives that provide members of Congress with alternative ways to think about this conflict. And if and when at some point in the future, there is a political ability to have peace between Israelis and Palestinians, it is going to be because of a grassroots movement of people that seek coexistence and collaboration moving forward. And it's a very unique aspect. And one of the things that brought me to want to work with USIEA is the fact that we think outside the box. We're pioneering in our work, and it's respected by members of Congress, even from those that may not necessarily agree with us. They respect what we're doing and they're willing to listen. And in Washington, that's not always so easy to accomplish.
Yeah, that's great. Well, EJ, thank you very much. We couldn't be doing this without you. And the incredible day-to-day efforts on Capitol Hill. And I wanted just to also, Jen Leslie, you just appeared at the top. You were on another page, so I missed you. But Jen Leslie is just amazing. She's our chief of staff. She is the hub at the center of this wheel and just makes this organization run. And I was telling her yesterday, you know, when we started USIEA years ago, it was just me and another person or two, and it was as difficult as you can possibly imagine. We never slept, we never ate. Is perhaps why I've now gained 10 pounds in the last 2 years, and largely due to Joan Leslie and just the incredible pressure that she's taken off. And just above her is Shelby with the red hair. Wave your hand, Shelby. She's running communications for us. And so everything you're getting on a daily basis or weekly basis is coming from Shelby Putnam. But I want to just thank both of you for the incredible role that y'all are playing to make all this work. And just to your point, EJ, I want to just say Congress is thrust right now. And if you might imagine that there's some redemption that is going to come out of this war. And we've got 100 people on here. I want to just say it again. There's going to be some redemption that comes out of this war. It's not just a war for destruction. It's a war for redemption. Israel's going to be absent a major terrorist proxy on their southern border. More likely than not, Hezbollah is going to be pushed deeper into Lebanon, and they're going to have a big, huge buffer so that the northern communities of Syria and Lebanon, or inside of Israel on the borders of Lebanon and Syria, are going to be able to have a new lease on life too. A totally different change for where things are. Things are going to be different inside the West Bank. So I want you to see redemption. And I also want you to understand that Congress is changing. Democrats and Republicans are coalescing at this point, rather than being so divided about Iran and how we handle Iran. We are watching these significant legislative patterns where there is a focus right now to put sanctions back on Iran that cripple their economy, that change the game from where we have been. That is on their petroleum industry, their nuclear program, their technological advancements, their ability to fund the terrorist proxies. Congress is directly focused there, very much so. Secondly, they're bringing resolutions forth almost every week in support of this war, Israel's need to defend itself, their right to defend itself, with bipartisan support. And it is just an incredible show of strength to have the United States Congress behind Israel right now. Thirdly, as EJ is leading the way on this on so many fronts, on the anti-Semitism front, as we're watching that horrible, ugly monster rear its head in the United States, you're going to watch Congress, bipartisan support, remove the ability of institutions to be able to tolerate that. And they're going to be prosecuted. They're going to be defunded. These are some of the redemptive ends to this war. So as we move on, I want to say that I don't like to live in the dour news of war and just stay on a negative plane and in all the impossibilities, because we are a people of the solutions. And that is what USIEA is doing today, is we're coming up with solutions and ways to go forward. That is who we are. It's who we're going to continue to be. One of my favorite people on the earth is Ari Sacher. He's the former chief engineer of Iron Dome. He's got 3 children inside the war on Hamas. He's living day and night with this. He doesn't sleep at night. He sleeps with one eye open. If you had 3 children in the war on Gaza and on Hamas and Hezbollah, you would probably not sleep at night either. But I want to just honor this man. He is, as you know, led the way on Iron Dome achievements, David Sling, all of the efforts in the missile defense realm. He's the choice educator on Capitol Hill, and we get to have him on our team. Ari, I'd like for you, in the course of what you're going to share, to talk a little bit about what Defense Minister Yoav Gallant talked about in creating a buffer in the northern part of Israel. But you can get to that when you want to.
Thank you. Let me just give you guys a brief update what's going on the ground here. It's a roller coaster. I find myself checking my news feed about every 10 minutes, and I've given up on the major news, CNN, Yediot. I just go straight to my Telegram. Got 3 feeds, and it's horrific. You go from hope to despair and back to hope again. It's very, very complex. The understanding is that the situation will go on at least until March. I'm working my day job at Rafael making missiles, and we're trying to get our hands around how we're going to be able to continue to provide Israel with the weapons that it needs, given the fact that approximately 20% of our workforce is in the army. There are single mothers who are left taking care of their kids. There are about 250,000 Israelis who have been displaced, Israelis that live within now 4 to 7 kilometers from what's about 4 miles from the border, either the northern border with Lebanon or the border with Gaza. These people have been displaced, and it's having a huge impact. There's a huge impact not only in work, but there's a huge impact in tourism. Israel, her number one industry, I think it's being eclipsed soon by high tech, because we're bloody good at that. But the number one industry in Israel is tourism, and no one's coming to Israel. Every single airline other than El Al and other smaller Israeli airlines have canceled all flights to Tel Aviv for the near foreseeable future. United won't even tell us when they're going to start flying again. Air Canada, these airlines that I typically take when I head out to Australian Emirates, nothing. There's 1 flight a day to Dubai. There used to be 9. We just passed our budget yesterday or the day before, and there's a lot of slashing that needs to be done. Insufficient slashing has been done. The understanding is that this war will be paid for by my grandchildren. In the meanwhile, what's going on now is we have a ceasefire. We're not calling it a ceasefire because with a ceasefire, there's understandings that we're not going to go back and fight. And the understanding now is that we are going to go back and fight. We have 2 major goals to this war. One goal is to completely and entirely destroy Hamas. The other goal is to get back all, and I mean all, of the 240 Israelis that have been kidnapped. We've received about 70 of them so far. There are now discussions ongoing as to whether or not we should continue with this ceasefire and get more of them. Question is, does Hamas even know where they are? Because we understand that some of these people have been transferred to other rogue groups, as if Hamas isn't a rogue group itself. There are also understandings that there are certain, when we went into Shifa Hospital about a week ago, we came out with a whole bunch of bodies, which were taken back to Israel to be analyzed to see if any of these bodies that were in the morgue in the Shifa Hospital in Gaza were Israelis. And in the meanwhile, what's going on? Well, it's sort of quiet in Gaza. They're quasi keeping the ceasefire. Every once in a while, there'll be an explosion. So far, there have been 4 explosions in northern Gaza, which were IEDs, these explosive devices that were blown up by Hamas. Boys will be boys. So we're going to allow them to continue flagrantly violating the ceasefire because, hey, we want to be able to get our hostages out of Hamas. In the interim, also the northern border has been quiet. Hezbollah has been keeping up a low-intensity conflict. Hezbollah has weapons that make Hamas look like, in the words of a previous president, a JV group. They have 150,000 weapons, rockets that are trained on Israel, many of them with precision-guided capabilities. And if Hezbollah decides to enter the fray, then all bets are off, everything changes. So Hezbollah had been content for a low-intensity conflict, which was good for me because that's where all of my children are, in the Lebanese border, other than my daughter who's deep in underground in Tel Aviv. And what has happened is that during the course of this ceasefire, Hezbollah has been taking advantage of the fact that no one's shooting at anybody. Now, they had been taking steps away from the border. Our number one fear of Hezbollah is not a rocket fire. We're scared that Hezbollah is going to cross over the border and they are going to do the same thing that Hamas did. We were unaware that human beings were capable of acting with such butchery. Now we are. And we don't think that Hezbollah is any different than Hamas. And our goal is to keep them off the border and away from the border. And now there have been pictures taken as recently as today of Hezbollah soldiers, terrorists, that have come to the border. They're taking a look at the border fence and any kind of deterrence that we had gained during those last 50 days has pretty much been lost. It is critical that Hezbollah leave the southern part of Lebanon. They have to go 20 kilometers north to the Litani River. This was passed in a UN resolution 1701 in 2006 after the Second Lebanon War, that if Hezbollah would be so kind as to move north of the Litani, and the sovereign state of Lebanon, which is 1/3 owned and operated by Hezbollah, would be so kind as to manage their own country, then everybody would be happy. We'd all live happily ever after. Since 2006, that has not been, UN Resolution 1701 has not been upheld. It has been violated time and time again. There is no way that Israel can keep can bring our residents back to Kiryat Shmona, the close to 50,000 residents in the north of Israel who have left their homes because of Hezbollah, until Hezbollah leaves, with a certain caveat. And what's the caveat? The caveat is, let me take a step back. What have we learned so far from this war that we can implement? The first thing we have learned from the war is that we must be permanently ready for the worst possible scenario. And the worst possible scenario is way worse than what we think is the worst possible scenario. On October 7th, we had next to no soldiers that were in the Gaza, that were in the Gazan border. We were unready. We were unprepared. We need to be ready. We need to be prepared. This means that in the northern border right now, there are 100,000 soldiers. There will continue to be a large number of soldiers even after any kind of war is over. We will have to keep people up there, because unless Hezbollah leaves the southern part of Lebanon, the Israeli border, we're going to have to protect against it. We're going to need to spend a lot more money. We're going to have people are going to be doing a lot more reserve duty. When I was growing up as a little boy in Israel, when I was in the army, I did 45 days of reserve duty a year. Today, soldiers do 2 weeks. Soldiers are going to go back to doing reserve duty because, you know what? We're living in a bad part of town, and we have really icky neighbors, and we need to be able to protect ourselves from those neighbors. The second thing Israel needs to do is Israel needs to legitimize the option of a war of choice and a preemptive strike. On October the 6th, and Mr. Netanyahu said, situation's really bad in Gaza, we have to go in there right now. And had we preemptively attacked Hamas, we would have been sanctioned and censured by the entire world, potentially the United States as well. What we have learned, and what our friends and neighbors have learned, is sometimes you have to do what is necessary without being attacked first. And I guarantee you that if there is a third Lebanon war, it will be because Israel has preemptively attacked Hezbollah, because we've come to the conclusion that we cannot live with Hezbollah on our northern border, regardless of how many soldiers we have up there. Last thing I was asked to talk about was the United States. What do we need from America? Number one, we need munitions. Right now, we're fighting a one-front war. We still need munitions, and not only precision-guided munitions like JDAM and SDB that have been used to great success in taking down houses, the particular house, the particular building. You've seen a whole row of high-rise buildings, and whoosh, the one in the middle goes down. That's JDAM. That's SDB. We also need more prosaic weapons. We need guns. We need bullets. We are arming every single town in this country with rifles, because what happened in May of 21, when the Israeli Arab populace revolted and they started taking to the streets and attacking Israelis. You have to make sure that doesn't happen again. And as an aside, the Israeli Arab population this time is acting completely differently. I wouldn't say that they're deterred. I would say that they're just as angered as we are. When I get to my house, I have to pass by, no matter how I get to my house, I have to pass by an Arab town. And every Arab town that I have passed by has a huge placard in front of it that says, "Friends in need, in times of trouble, we're there for you." And that's what I want to hear. But just in case they're not, I want to have American rifles. The last thing we need from America is U.S. support. We're hearing sounds from John Kirby that we have to be very careful when we go to southern Gaza. Of course, we're going to be careful when we go to southern Gaza. We're Israeli, for God's sake. We love life more than any other country in the world. But we will do what is necessary to destroy Hamas. We will protect civilians as much as possible. Hamas chooses to hide behind civilians. It is what it is. The world as a whole needs to stand up, needs to support the Gazan refugees. And that's not only my problem, it's not only Israel's problem, it's a global problem. And I know that together with American support, with your support, we will be successful. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ari. Really appreciate that commentary, and thank you for being right in the middle of it with great understanding, discernment, and wisdom. And I think that it really is a high point on this call that to remember that we're really at war. We are at war. Our nation is at war. Our ally is at war. It is a time to recognize that every day, not to just go about life as normal. We've got Christmas ahead of us, and every tendency will be just to go, okay, we need to just go Christmas shopping and do our thing. Well, it may be that we just make some sacrifices in this month. We make sacrifices in the midst of war, and I'm anticipating that we will see some of those out of this group. Time spent in prayer, time giving, time put toward communicating with others and bringing them into what we're doing. It is an effort to be inside of a war. It's an added effort. Well, Ari, thank you so much. We really appreciate the sacrificial role that your family is playing. Ari has 8 children. So can you imagine all 8 children having gone through the IDF? It is just a remarkable thing. So anyway, I want to just move on from here to development officer. We thank God for her. She's playing a major role with those of you that are interested in getting involved with USIEA. And so go ahead, Stacy, and give your update.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Heather, and thank you all of my colleagues for your previous comments. We are in quite a time right now, and it is truly an honor to be a part of this organization. I'm in my 3rd month now, having no idea what was coming, and I'm just constantly in awe of what a small group of people is able to accomplish, but we cannot do this without you. Yesterday, as you know, was Giving Tuesday. We wanted to do a first ever matching gift. The theme for yesterday was Israel Lives Now and Forever, and the number 18. And so we are so thankful that we were able to raise that $18,000 plus raise $18,000 yesterday in the day itself. So we surpassed our $36,000, and we are so thankful and grateful for that, as that is very needed. As we press on now towards the end of the year, we are still a few $100,000 short of our goal. And we absolutely cannot do this without you and without your existing relationships with friends and with family. We cannot do this without you. And so I want to challenge you today, as you have heard all the very specific things that are going on. We constantly hear from our friends. I see that you guys are doing more tactical and making progress more than any other organization that we are hearing from right now. And we are so thankful that God has given us these skills and these talents and these amazing people that are a part of our organization. And so we need your help. And I just wanted to urge you that as you are out having conversations in your workplaces, with your neighbors, with your family, with your friends, remember us, remember our message, remember what we're doing. Encourage others to discuss this, to lean into our communications. I know we have several people who may or may not be on our email list. I would encourage you to go to our website today if you've not been on it recently. That's USIEducation.org. Look at our website, sign up for our emails if you're not currently subscribing to them. We don't give your information away. We do provide timely updates and try to keep everyone abreast of what is going on and what progress we are able to make here in Congress and overseas in Israel. Again, we cannot do that without you. So please subscribe, get your friends and your family to subscribe. But secondly, to give. We are short of our goal. We've got a lot of great opportunity ahead of us as we continue to make progress overseas. There's support that is needed then, but we have even bigger goals long term. And so to know we need to begin looking at long term, some strategies there and how we continue to grow globally. Right now, we're in the Southeast and we're doing a great job of getting our message out locally, but we need your help to reach a lot farther than that. And so we can't do that without your support financially. And so again, just as you're out and about, have those conversations, remember us, remember our messaging, remember what we stand for. We are all here as a staff to help answer any questions that you have. If you have giving conversations about ways to give to USIEA, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. We have a great group of people that work with us that can help you make tax deductible gifts that helps us, and it also helps you as the donor. Again, tell your friends too. We are here and we want to continue making progress, and we need your financial support in order to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Stacy. And I wanted just to mention too that next week we will have Congressman Mike Lawler on for a briefing. I believe it's Monday. Is that right, Joan Leslie?
Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Central Time.
Tuesday, 9:15. What I want to say about him, he is carrying the day in the U.S. Congress. He is bringing the key legislation to the fore. If I could choose a congressman to bring to the briefing on just the key, most important things right now, the SHIP Act and also the anti-Semitism, is Mike Lawler. And so we've got him for next week for 20 minutes. And I just wanted to make sure you bring your friends and join that call. You're going to get a real window into where we're headed and the pivot that's taking place in a bipartisan way on these things that we've languished over for years. So following that, the following week is going to be Rich Goldberg. He is the expert in the world today on Iran. It is as we know, that's the head of the snake in all of this. Iran is going to bite everybody if we don't do something about Iran. So we are in that really critical point about where's the United States going to go with this. Rich Goldberg is fascinating. I cannot stop reading about him and stop following him. He's the best we have out there on Iran. So we're going to have him as well. And continue to say your prayers for the United States Israel Education Association. We are going to be briefing Congress most likely next week with the IDF spokes leaders, giving the next stage of the war, bringing in foreign affairs and state and foreign ops and also armed services committees. And we're looking forward to our continued role this month on Capitol Hill. Thank all of you for joining. We sure appreciate you.